From the Drake Union at The Ohio State University, it's the National Hour with your hosts, Darius Thigpen and Jeffrey Hammersley.
And welcome to the special Halloween edition of the National. I, however, am Jim Tressel.
And in the left corner, in the Scarlet Trunks, fighting out of Tampa, Florida, standing at 6'1", weighing in at 180 pounds, it is the light heavyweight champion of the world, Darius Thigpen.
Oh, okay. Okay there, Darius.
Follow that.
Well, I can't beat that intro, but what we can start off with is the Ohio State-Penn State game that we're going to recap. Number 4 Ohio State dismantling the Nittany Lions 63-14. And this offense was just off the charts. Braxton Miller, 18-24, 252 yards, 3 touchdowns, 11 carries, 68 yards on the ground, and 2 touchdowns also. Darius, if you were looking for an offensive scoring juggernaut from Ohio State, you got it against Penn State.
Well, you saw the immense accuracy and the pocket presence of Braxton Miller. Obviously, he did run the ball for 68 yards. He had a couple touchdowns on the ground, threw for 3 more. But when you have that passing attack and you can stand in the pocket and look, scan the defense, and find an open man, a pocket passer that can run. That is the most dangerous thing in football, in my opinion.
I mean, some of the plays with Braxton Miller, it looked like he was going to get sacked for a 6-yard loss, runs around, picks up like 9 yards in total. I don't know how you stop that. For Penn State the entire night, they couldn't stop it.
Well, they couldn't stop it because there was also the threat of Carlos Hyde on the ground. He ran for 147 yards on 16 touches, nearly 10 yards a pop, Jeff. I mean, this guy has only gotten better with each game in Big Ten play.
I mean, if you are planning to stop Ohio State right now, I don't know what you do. You can shut down Braxton, but Carlos Hyde's there. You saw at Penn State they would try to blitz on Braxton, hands off to Carlos Hyde. That's a good 9-10 yard right up the middle run there. How do you stop Ohio State? Is there a way to stop Ohio State?
The way to stop Ohio State is force turnovers and pray. I mean, this offense right now is clicking. They're rolling so well. I mean, you look at Carlos Hyde. Here's a guy who hasn't had a play in the backfield made on him. Mm-hmm. Every time somebody hits him in the backfield, he bounces off of it and finds a way back to the line of scrimmage or get a gain. He's one of the leaders in the Big Ten in yards after contact. I mean, he's a scary dude, and on top of everything else, he's one of the quickest guys.
Yeah, and so with the quickness there, I mean, Jordan Hall, 8 carries, 81 yards. So it's just not a one-man show in Carlos Hyde. It's Jordan Hall, then you can bring Dontre Wilson. This entire the depth at running back is just phenomenal for Ohio State.
And this is a point we've talked about throughout the season, how many running backs they have, how many starters they have. Carlos Hyde is obviously the number 1, but then you have Jordan Hall, who would be a number 1 in. Early on in the season before Carlos Hyde came back, he was leading the Big Ten in scoring with 8 touchdowns in the first 4 games. And then you have, obviously, the freshman, the phenomenal Dontre Wilson, who's a lot of fun to watch. I mean, you can go so many different ways. Don't forget about Ezekiel Elliott. The one game he came in against Florida A&M, 160 yards in the second half.
Now, that, and also at the same time, the receiving core, you have Devin Smith, his 5 catches, 90 yards, but also go right back to the running game right now. Kenny Guyton, 3 carries, 23 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, he comes in, one was like a QB sneak, but the other one was like a legitimate touchdown run. There's just so much running power for Ohio State, and then there's so much passing power. It doesn't matter if you have Braxton in or Kenny Guyton in or Jordan Hall in for Hyde or Hyde in for Hall. The Buckeyes are going to move down the field and they're going to score some points.
I mean, to be fair, it was a bit of mop-up duty for Kenny Guyton, but he did come in and he did look good. And, I mean, obviously, he's a guy that's a fan favorite. After the 1 touchdown he scored, he goes down to a knee, takes his helmet off. Everyone goes crazy. But, I mean, he's one of those guys you really do appreciate and you love. But, like you said, he has shown that when Ohio State has him in at quarterback, it's not a drop-off, not a significant drop-off anyway, between Braxton Miller and him.
That's the big thing. Now, what happened with Ohio State, and I noticed this, the blocking. Screen plays, guys were getting picked off. Ohio State was moving down the field. Screen plays were going for 10, 20 yards. Also, Braxton's big touchdown run, blockers in front, with a blocker in front and Devin Smith. I mean, we've not seen this season, but just how well the blocking was from the wide receivers.
You talk about plays like the bubble screen, the toss plays. These are plays that you have to have receiver blocking on. If you don't have good blocking receivers, you can't run those plays no matter how electrifying a short receiver or slot guy that you have. If you don't have good blocking, it's all for naught. A play is going to be made. If you have great blocking, you can run that play with almost anyone. We've seen Devin Smith getting a lot of these bubble screens. He scored on several of them throughout the season. It's an easy play to get you 5 to 10 yards, if you have good blocking. And Ohio State is taking advantage of defenses playing off the receivers because Devin Smith and Corey Brown have that speed to go deep.
And really, a couple of the plays, if you play too loose off Ohio State receivers, they can beat you just in the air or on the ground and vice versa. I don't know, really, if you're Penn State, look at the game tape. Everything went wrong from that game. The blocking, looking back on their offensive side, giving up 3 turnovers to Ohio State, is that more of Christian Hackenberg, his 2 picks, freshman mistake, or has Ohio State's defense really gone locked down and has really just gone something different than what we've seen before in the season?
I mean, let's not be naive. It was a little bit of both. It was the first big game Christian Hackenberg had played on the road at night in a hostile environment like Ohio Stadium. So you got to take that into consideration. He had played so well against Michigan, but I mean, against Ohio State, again, like you said, that was at home.
Yeah.
It was at home. And then you go on the road to Columbus, take on the Buckeyes. It just isn't the same type of environment. And the Buckeye defense, you got to give credit to them as well. But Hackenberg, man, he just did not look comfortable at any point. The defensive line did a great job in that game, Jeff.
And there's with Pitt Brown and C.J. Barnett getting those interceptions. It looked like on both of those picks, it was a forced throw, especially the one in the end zone, about a yard deep. Hackenberg, you can tell, since he was just trying to get the touchdown, but he was going in coverage. So, I mean, there's 2 picks understandable. I mean, he got pulled out of the game for, I believe, Ferguson, the backup. He did slightly better. But for Ohio State's defense, I mean, for Ryan Shazier, the big highlight, 10 tackles and a sack in that game. Big game against the Nittany Lions.
And Shazier has been playing so well all year long. We knew he was going to be one of the main performers coming into this year. But how about we give some love, Jeff, to somebody who's been playing really well that we haven't talked about a ton, Noah Spence. He had 2 sacks and 3 tackles for loss in that game. Matter of fact, I bet you guys didn't know this. He has more tackles for losses, and more sacks than Jadeveon Clowney this season. He has been playing great football.
I mean, I saw that stat, and I was like, wow, Jadeveon Clowney walked in as a number 1.
He was a Heisman candidate.
He was in the Heisman running, then after, I believe, like the 3rd or 4th game, he dropped off the radar. But saying that Noah Spence showing up, and now at this point, down the stretch of the schedule, every game matters now. We're going to be into November, starting tomorrow, and really for Ohio State, every game matters even more. But looking at Penn State's combined passing numbers in that last game, 19 to 34, 237, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, 4 sacks. Stifled, they got a couple hundred yards in the air, but it's the 4 sacks and 2 picks that are the big thing there. And really, we said this earlier, Ohio State's defense is doing a lot better, and they shut down a Penn State receiver. Again, we'll actually take that back. The receiving, however, 173 yards off 12 receptions.
Yeah.
That's the big thing there.
That was for Allen Robinson.
Yeah.
Remember, Allen Robinson had 60-plus yards of that in the 1 touchdown grab. The one amazing highlight play, he just goes cross-field back against the whole defense. It was an amazing play. But you really have to look at the receiving core. Once again, beating Ohio State. This is the 4th game where a guy has easily over 100 yards, 4th straight, going back to Jared Aberdarius, who had 200-plus against the Buckeyes. I mean, this cannot continue to happen. That one receiver really is beating up on Ohio State.
Yeah, it is. Aberdarius, we saw that with Wisconsin. Northwestern had their own guys. Penn State, the same thing here. Where I got the numbers mixed up, Ohio State, the defense locking down on the rushing game, though.
Right.
Belton, 98 yards, held to under 100. Ohio State, that streak has been alive the entire season where the opposing team can't get 100 with one
No
player.
rusher has picked up 100 yards against Ohio State. They're one of just 5 teams in NCAA to not allow a 100-yard rusher, although it did come close with Belton getting 98. Yeah.
That's the big thing, but that was this last week against Penn State. Now we're going in the game on Saturday. Ohio State at Purdue and West Lafayette, noontime game. Scarlet and Gray Sports Radio will be there. Purdue 1-6 on the year. Lost 14-0 to Michigan State, 44-7 to Nebraska, 41-10 to Wisconsin. Lone win against Indiana State, 20-14. However, Ohio State has not won there since 2007. It's an 0-2 streak. Upset alert for the Buckeyes in this game.
Always. Anytime Ohio State and Purdue are playing in West Lafayette at noon, that is a trap game. Ohio State has not won at Purdue since 2007. Furthermore, they haven't beat them in a day game and a noon game. You have to go all the way back into the early thousands. Remember, Holy Buckeye.
Yep.
That was the last time Ohio State has beat that team at noon. because the last time that they won was a night game.
And that, for Ohio State, back to that season, the season where they won the national championship, that was that fourth down play. If they don't get that,
that was the one play.
There's a chance Purdue wins that game, and Ohio State's into the Rose Bowl, not the Fiesta Bowl, because that was a title game that year, in the Rose Bowl or something else. But traditionally, the Buckeyes, this is the one game that they've never done well on the road against.
It's been since something like 95 or 96 since Ohio State blew out Purdue at Purdue. Purdue always plays the Buckeyes tough when they're playing West Lafayette.
And looking last year, Purdue came into Columbus. If Kenny Guy doesn't come in, there's a legitimate chance Ohio State loses that game. The undefeated season's up. It would have been the 11-1 season, not the undefeated 12-0 season. But does that play in the part for the Purdue players, the ones who are still here? They know last year we went into Columbus, we lost in overtime. Can we handle them at home? Even though our record's 1-6, do we believe that we can beat Ohio State in our home place and ruin their national championship
here's the thing about this Purdue team. They played really good in some losses, lost 14-0 to Michigan State, holding Michigan State to just 14 points. Offense just couldn't get it going. But then they got destroyed in some games, 41-10 to Wisconsin, 44-7 against Nebraska. This is a team that has played close games against Notre Dame, but they just can't seem to figure it out when they really need to. However, I mean, I do think what you said, the fact that they played Ohio State so close a year ago, and 2 years ago, the fact that they beat Ohio State and Braxton Miller, were able to contain him in that game, they have to have a little bit of confidence coming into this game. New head coach in Hazel, former Ohio State assistant.
A Tressel disciple.
Tressel disciple, one of your guys.
My guys.
He's coming in as a head coach. It is a new regime, but I do think that these guys have a bit of confidence and are not going to back away from Ohio State. They're not going to be looking at the names on the front of the jersey and worrying about the big bad Buckeyes coming into West Lafayette.
Purdue, I've heard they will try to make this game a blackout. The question is, how many people will show this game? Because we know Ohio State fans travel well. Do you see it being a lot of Purdue people coming in this game, or do you see a lot of Scarlet in Ross-Ade Stadium?
It's going to be a majority Ohio State fan, but that doesn't mean anything. West Lafayette, they're playing on their home turf. Purdue's going to be ready to play.
Prediction and final score, too.
I'll go 28-10 Ohio State.
28-10. I'm going to go 35-14. I think the Buckeyes,
35-14.
I think they can put up some decent points there. And if the defense plays like how they did against Penn State, they will be fine. That does it for Ohio State football. We'll take a short break and come back with NCAA football here on the National Hour.
And welcome back to the National Hour. It's great to have you folks joining us here on Buckeye TV. And we're going to get right into some more college football. We already talked about the Buckeyes. They're playing Purdue. But let's go on down south to the SEC, Jeff. Let's start with Missouri and South Carolina. SEC East action, a game that went into double overtime, and Missouri had their hearts broken, lost 27-24, and holding up the Mizzou helmet over there,
Just
Jeff.
a small Mizzou helmet.
Yeah, I mean, it was a game that really showed how tough this Missouri team is,
Yes,
but
very.
without their starting quarterback, I mean, how far are they going to be able to go?
Well, saying that they get the heartbreaking loss against South Carolina in their home place, I mean, they had South Carolina dead to rights.
Yeah.
And then they came back when Shaw came back, and you just cannot lose those games at home in that environment. I mean, especially with the missed field goal at the end. You're operating with a backup quarterback. Fortunately, the SEC East is hurting themselves. Everybody's going down. So Mizzou, still with that one loss, I can still see them controlling their own destiny right now. If they can win out, then I think they're going to be in the SEC title game against Alabama. But if that does happen, what are their odds of actually winning the SEC? Not very likely.
Well, I mean, we'll see once we get there, but you did mention they have a one-game lead right now. As long as they win out, they will be going to Atlanta to play in the SEC championship game.
Close.
It's almost a national semifinal. Seems like it is almost every year. But they will be going up against possibly Bama. LSU's not out of it, and Auburn, they have a chance too.
If Auburn can beat Bama and LSU can beat Bama, I give up on life at that point. This is like 2008 all over again.
It would be so topsy-turvy, so wacky and crazy.
Now, let's say that does happen. Would Ohio State stay at 4? Or does something happen? Does somebody jump then? Do they move to 3, 2? I don't want to know that.
We'll
question.
get to BCS talk later.
But, I mean, it's grinding my gears right now.
It
though.
really is.
4 games left, and we're still sitting on 4, and possibly could get jumped by somebody else.
Okay, so let's look at this team right now from Mizzou. Tennessee, Kentucky, Ole Miss, and then end the season with number 12, Texas A&M. of those games, obviously A&M is going to be the toughest. But
Yes.
could one of those first three give them any difficulty?
I believe Tennessee, their quarterback, is like another crucial injury to that team. So I'm going to give that's a W right there in my book from Missouri right there. Kentucky, W. So you got 2 W's. Ole Miss is a big question mark right there. Ole Miss, they played A&M close, but they lost to Bama. I believe they got shut out by Bama, or was close to it.
Yeah.
That's a toss-up game, and I think because it's in Missouri, and so far they've beaten Florida and Georgia, even though those teams were weak, they've beaten those teams. So I'm going to take them. That's going to be their third win. I got them going 3-1 in that 4-game stretch right there.
Really?
I think they can do it.
So we assume the A&M loss. I don't know if they can beat Ole Miss, though. Ole Miss, remember, they beat LSU. That's a legit win for Ole Miss. And although they got shut out by Bama, they didn't let Bama give up 40 points or anything. I mean, they held Bama offensively to just about 20 points. So I think there is something with this Ole Miss team. You can't overlook them.
It's going to be very interesting down the home stretch. In that whole SEC East, we don't know what's going to happen. For all we know, Tennessee shows up like they did against Georgia. They beat.
Yeah.
We just don't know. It's one of those things where you just cannot predict accurately how everything's going to go down with injuries and everything else happening in that conference.
Well, one thing that's a little bit more certain is what the Pac-12 will come down to, and it looks like it's going to be a Oregon State, or Oregon and Stanford final to decide the Pac-12 North. And I'll tell you what, Pac-12 has looked really good this season, and number 3 and number 12 going at it this past Saturday. Oregon beat UCLA, and it was a close game until you got into the second half where Oregon turned it on.
I believe it was like, 14-14.
14-14 at halftime.
And I was doing color commentating for Scarlet and Gray Sports Radio for the Ohio State-Penn State game. I'm just going, this is going to be a good game. I called like 3 drives. Next thing I know, it's 42-14 Oregon.
Right.
And I'm just going, is this really happening? Is this real life right now? Because this Oregon team, they can do that kind of business in the second half against a top 15 UCLA team. That's a very dangerous Oregon team you're going to be dealing with down the line.
And furthermore, Jeff, it was 21-14 after 3 quarters. So you had all those points coming up in the fourth quarter, and Oregon turned it on. I mean, they have another gear that they can just flip back and turn on and switch to. It's so scary to think that team can go from being nothing to 100 miles per hour just like that.
It's really scary. I think when they got to play Stanford and then that Pac-12 championship game, they get their opponent thinking, hey, it's 7 up, 14 up, and then, all right, guys, boom, and then they're gone. That's a scary thing with Oregon. At any second, they can just take off. That happened to Tennessee. That happened to Washington. That happened to UCLA this season.
Yeah, and their only true test for the rest of the season for Oregon is Stanford, but that's a Thursday game, Jeff. What do you think about this Thursday night football?
I'm just happy that my kid midterms on a Wednesday because that enables me to watch the game on Thursday. But they could have easily made that game Saturday night in prime time.
Oh, yeah.
College game, they could have easily gone over there. It could have drawn a huge crowd, but Thursday, it's still a night game, would still draw the crowd, but it's just weird thinking, a game that could dictate the national championship picture is going to be on a Thursday night, not a Saturday night, like what Miami and Florida State's going to be on this week.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one to look at. Now it's going to be one coming up. How about we go over to the Big 12, go to the middle of the country.
12.
Number 15, Oklahoma, beat number 10, Texas Tech, and that was a game 38-30 that Oklahoma was able to get the win in a really tough game. Oklahoma coming in, we knew that they had struggled in the big games as of late, but Texas Tech looking good, downed by the Sooners.
Yeah,
Oklahoma took it.
Texas Tech, an undefeated team entering that game, and they left with that one loss. I mean, really, a couple undefeated to go down this week. But I think for Texas Tech, they really control their own destiny. They could have been we could have easily been in the Fiesta Bowl, or even the national championship picture if you can win out. But now the one loss to Oklahoma is now back in the picture of, they could be the representative for the Big 12 and the BCS.
Well, think of it this way. Oklahoma only has one loss, and that one loss was probably, for their standards, an embarrassing loss to Texas, who's been really down this season. But you take away that Texas loss, this could be a team in the national title picture.
Yes.
Are they still in the picture with one loss?
With the one loss, no. National championship picture's out, I think, with the way the SEC is. You have an undefeated Ohio State team, but no one's mentioning that.
The Pac-12.
Baylor's undefeated. Pac-12, you have Oregon and Stanford close to each other. Stanford could jump, or just craziness could happen if they can beat Oregon and win out. I think there's just too much ground to be making up for Oklahoma unless something catastrophic happened like 2008, which I keep mentioning. That's the only way Oklahoma's got to find themselves backing into the national championship game.
All right, Jeff, give me one team that's the best team that no one's talking about right now.
Other than Ohio State,
Other than Ohio State.
I'm going to say Baylor. I think they put up the numbers, but I think if they can do that just once against one of the big, like an Oklahoma or somebody, they need to be taken seriously, because if they keep, as long as they can keep scoring, the defense can give up their points, but as long as the offense, as long as they're picking up the 500, 600, 700 yards of offense and getting points, they're golden, and that's what their key to success has been all season.
I'll take Stanford in this one
Stanford.
because I do think that they have the defense to beat Oregon. They showed it last year that they can stop this fast-paced Oregon offense. It just comes down to whether or not they can score.
Yeah.
That's the problem, some of the issues they've had in early season. But if they play good defense against an Oregon team, that is a dangerous national title type team.
Last season, Oregon, they had some very inopportune fumbles down the end of that game, and that's what doomed them. I think they know that in this season. I don't expect maybe a pick or a fumble, but that's all you're going to get out of that Oregon team, because I think they know they're this close to a championship. They cannot lose to Stanford, and they have to win the Pac-12.
All right, week 10 of college football. Let's move on to some college football picks. We're going to start with Michigan at Michigan State. Sparty? Who are you taking?
I got Sparty. They're taking home the Paul Bunyan Trophy, and then Sparty's going to get the big one against Michigan.
Defense wins. I'm taking Michigan State in this one, but look out for Devin Gardner and Jeremy Gallen to have a big
Dangerous.
game. Oklahoma State, number 18, at number 15, Texas Tech. Tech coming off the loss, but Oklahoma State still hanging in there.
Kingsbury and Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech, a great way to rebound would be able to defeat Oklahoma State at home.
Texas Tech is at home, as you mentioned, so I'm going to go with Tech as well. Finally, number 7, Miami at Florida State. Night game. Who are you going with? I think I know who I'm going with.
I am going to say upset, and I think the Canes. I think the Canes are back.
All right, if you guys didn't figure it out, I'm going Florida State. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to have some NFL for you here on the National Hour.
And welcome back to the National Hour. Now it's NFL football talk. Darius, first game we're going to talk about, Detroit Lions getting past the Dallas Cowboys in a shootout, 31-30. And this is the big stat line. All the numbers looked okay. Then you hit Calvin Johnson's numbers. And I'm just going to underline this. 14 receptions, 329 yards, and a touchdown. Megatron getting it done against Dallas.
Oh, I didn't realize Calvin Johnson was playing quarterback on Sunday. Oh, he had that many receiving yards. Yeah, I mean, this guy is just unreal. I mean, the numbers, incredible. 329, 14 catches, 1 touchdown. Tackled inside the 5, I think, 2 times.
Yeah.
He could have had another couple of touchdowns. This guy's a beast, and the fact that some people out there, mainly Dez Bryant, think that he's not the best receiver in the game, clearly fooling themselves.
I mean, on the topic of Dez Bryant, 3 catches, 72 yards, 2 touchdowns, modest numbers, but they pale in comparison to Calvin Johnson numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, I was telling you during the break, Calvin Johnson has a couple types of games. He has good games, great games, and then this game against the Cowboys. I mean, some guys don't throw for 329 yards, and he caught that off 14 catches.
Well, I mean, no disrespect to Dez Bryant, who probably is the second best receiver in the NFL, but it's clearly Megatron is number 1. Dez Bryant had a good game. He had 72 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 catches. But, I mean, looking at Calvin Johnson's numbers, 329 yards, just a few away from the NFL record. So he's at second most in one game all time. But, I mean, on top of that, they needed every single one of those yards because that was a game Detroit nearly gave away. 4 turnovers, a few Stafford picks, and a fumble. This could have easily been a game that Dallas routed Detroit at home. And they needed this offensive production.
I mean, absolutely. Looking at some more numbers, Detroit 29-13 on first downs, won that one. Time of possession was the big one. Even though they had those 4 turnovers, a 35-25 time of possession lead on the Cowboys. So that combination there helping. But the last play of the game, really, Stafford gets down like the 1-yard line. Tells everybody he's acting. Spike the football.
Clock it.
Just spike it. Let's get like another playoff. No, it's a QB sneak into the end zone, touchdown, extra point. And the Lions win the game there. How clutch and how gutsy was that call from Stafford?
It was a sweet call, but I was upset as a fantasy football owner because I have Reggie Bush. So I wanted Bush to get that game-winning touchdown and give me 6 more points. But as a football fan, that was a phenomenal game watching it. I mean, at one point in the fourth quarter, you're thinking Detroit is out of it. And right now, Calvin Johnson, he's just putting up garbage numbers. And Matt Stafford, he's going to keep throwing. But Dallas has this game. Detroit fought back in such an impressive way. And as a matter of fact, Stafford threw a pick late in the game with about 4 minutes remaining, and you were thinking at that time, no way Dallas loses this one. Dallas lost, and guess what? It wasn't on Romo.
And that's the thing that I think with Calvin Johnson, just really that offensive power from Detroit carrying him to that victory. That was that game. Another game we got to go to, Cincinnati Bengals. That was my jersey pick of the week against the Jets. It wasn't close. I thought it was going to be sort of close. A 49-9 rout of the New York Jets. I mean, it was Andy Dalton, Marvin Jones, 4 touchdowns, A.J. Green, 3 catches, 115 yards. Video game numbers from the Bengals against the Jets, who really, they beat the Patriots. So the Jets, what's happening?
I wish I knew. I mean, this is a New York team that looked really good defensively the last few years, and the problem was the offense can't score enough, but that defense really good. Now the defense gives up 40 points and 4 touchdowns to Marvin Jones, of all people. Obviously, they're going to be double teaming A.J. Green, so you want to have somebody else in the receiving corps step up, and boy did he. Marvin Jones with 4 touchdowns in that game. He had 4 touchdowns in his career coming into that game. So a really impressive game out of Jones. He played really well. Dalton, he had big numbers. A.J. Green, 115 yards on just 3 catches. That shows you the big explosive plays that he can put up in the receiving game.
And I just did some quick math on my paper here. I mean, the 3 catches, 115 yards. Yes, you heard that right. 3 catches for 115. 38.33 yards per catch. Those are deadly numbers there from A.J. Green. Really, and Andy Dalton, I mean, those yards alone couldn't have won that game for the Bengals, but they had 49 points to the 9, so really big game for the Bengals to win. They just move even further ahead in the AFC North. Next game, this one got interesting. Denver Broncos, Washington Redskins. Redskins were in control for part of this game, but they lose 45-21. 11 minutes left in the third quarter, as I was saying. Washington was up 21-7, and then Peyton Manning happened. Darius, we're expecting this from Peyton Manning.
We're expecting Peyton Manning, every time he touches the ball, to throw a touchdown. I mean, there's nothing he cannot do at this point in the passing game. I mean, he beat you with his mind. He beat you with his play call. He beat you with his arm at times. That's the one thing he really didn't have last year was his arm strength, and you can see it's back now. Yes. He's making throws he did not make last year, which has made this Denver team that much more explosive. And when they need a big play, they can reach back in the playbook and say, all right, we're going to have a bubble screen to Demaryius Thomas, 80 yards up the sideline. It makes no sense how it works, but it does. Yeah. That team is just clicking right now on offense. It
was that 21-7 Washington lead given up by a 38-point scoring run by the Broncos, so they went unanswered, and that closed out the game with that. And look at Peyton Manning. Now, we know Manning got sort of beat up during the Colts game, some sprained ankles and stuff. Threw 3 picks in the game, yet they could still win 45-21. Is it Peyton Manning that good, or does the defense help him out a lot to help him have that huge margin of victory, even though he lobbed 3 interceptions?
Yeah, he did throw 3 picks, like you said, but the return of Von Miller was really big.
That was big.
I mean, the defensive end out of Texas A&M, he really showed up in this past game. He had a strip sack on RG3, pressure on all day long. Defensive line was getting to RG3, and he did not look good. I mean, he had times where he made a couple throws, made some runs, but he was not comfortable. I mean, like we were talking about Hackenberg against Ohio State, he wasn't able to settle his feet and find open receivers. Mm-hmm. He was scrambling for his life and running the entire time because of how well that defensive line was playing.
That's how the Broncos were able to pull away with that 45-21 victory. A team that didn't have that big of a victory, Seattle Seahawks against the St. Louis Rams. Seahawks were riding that struggle bus for the majority of the game, and they got off at the right stop. I mean, Robert Quinn and Chris Long, 3 sacks on just a Seattle offense, which you thought was so powerful, getting shut down on the road in St. Louis. I mean, St. Louis playing without both of their starting Seattle playing without both of their starting tackles, but still the Rams were just really a yard away from catching the Seahawks.
I mean, you said it. They were playing without each of their offensive tackles. A huge loss for Seattle. But, I mean, at the same time, the Rams, this is what teams or people were expecting for this St. Louis team coming into the year. A lot of people didn't realize, but the Rams led the league in sacks last season, and a really great defensive line between Robert Quinn and Chris Long, each having 3 sacks in that last game. I mean, it was a game where Seattle was just trying to do whatever they could, and man, Russell Wilson just talk about pressure. He could not get his feet set at all. There were several times where he was going backwards on drives. I think there was one point where they sacked Russell Wilson on 4 straight dropbacks. There was a stretch there where he just could not get a ball off. He could not get a throw off.
Now, what he did get a few throws in, Golden Tate, 5 catches, 93 yards, 2 touchdowns. However, 20 yards and a taunted penalty there. Taunting, really, started at the 30-yard line, just waving at one of the defenders. Your thoughts on that?
Here's my take on taunting. If you don't like taunting, don't let the dude score on you. Simple as that. If you don't like it, stop him. He won't taunt anymore.
Do you think that the NFL, they've shut down the touchdown celebrations, basically?
Yeah, I think the NFL...
Do you think they're going to shut down taunting that and negate the touchdown
without
in
a
college?
doubt. Yeah, I mean, like in college, when you have taunting, you lose the points. You could see that happening very soon in the NFL. I, however, disagree with it. I mean, I don't necessarily like having somebody taunting, running up the sideline and saluting at somebody, pointing at them or something.
If you can't stop them,
but if you can't stop them, that's your job. You are paid as a defensive player.
You're getting big money to stop that guy.
Exactly. You are getting paid to stop him. If you don't want to hear him talk, stop him.
I mean, I'm in that proponent where I'm like, why they shut down the touchdown celebration? That's what, when someone scored a touchdown, I was like, what are they going to do?
It's entertaining.
Yeah. I mean, like Joe Horn and the cell phone with the Saints, then you had the popcorn and everything with T.O.
Remember like 2004, 2005 when you had Chad Johnson and T.O. and every week you're just waiting, what are they going to do next?
Yeah. I mean, they had the touchdown celebration in today's age. You got like fantasy points and a celebration. This would be the greatest thing ever right there.
What if you got fantasy points for the best celebration?
That, a whole league just for that. I mean, my mind is completely blown at that point. One real quick note, 49ers activate Aldon Smith. 49ers stronger here? Do you see them chasing back up and catching the Seahawks in that NFC West?
Remember, the 49ers are not out of it, and now they're getting back a huge part of their defensive line, the defensive end linebacker, Aldon Smith, in that 3-4, plays on the outside, the sack artist. He was one of the leading sackers over the last 2 years, and he's been really incredible on the defensive line. He's had his struggles off the field, so the 49ers feel comfortable bringing him back and feel like he's ready for football. And if he is, and he's playing back at 100%, my goodness, is that San Francisco defense scary.
All right, that does it for the review in football. Now it's for picks of the week. We got 5 games on the form right now. First one, Cincinnati Bengals at Miami Dolphins. Darius, who you got?
That one's going to be tonight. It's going to be down in Miami. It's a October 31st Halloween game. I think it's going to be a scary game for Miami fans. I think they are going to get thrashed by Cincinnati. I'm going Bengals big.
Saying that the Bengals put up 49 on the Jets in that contest, A.J. Green, Andy Dalton, and Giovanni Bernard, my boy, in the fantasy line right there. Bengals overwhelming in that one. Second one, Atlanta Falcons at Carolina Panthers. Do the Panthers get the big win against the Falcons?
I think so. I think Cam Newton is really starting to come into his own, and Atlanta's defense has been banged up and at some points just flat out bad this season. Cam Newton, speaking of bad, is a bad man. If you let him get space in the running, he's going to take off. If you give him open receivers, he's been able to hit them. And the offensive line has been playing well enough that he hasn't had to run for his life. He's been able to settle in. They've got a running game going, and that defense is surprisingly really, really good. Atlanta's simply not good this season.
I'm going to go to the other side, and I'm going to say Atlanta. I think that sense of urgency to try to pull your season around, it's going to hit them now. And I think with Matt Ryan and company, it's doable. Is it a long shot? Yes. But you got to start somewhere. I think starting with Carolina is what's going to happen for the Falcons. Game number 3 on the slate, Baltimore at Cleveland. Do you got the Browns or the Ravens in this one?
This is a tough one. I want to go Cleveland because I do think that Josh Gordon is by far the best receiver in this game between Baltimore and Cleveland. But at the same time, I just don't see Cleveland getting any other offense. I mean, Josh Gordon and James Cameron has literally been that offense. Other than that, averaging right around 2.5 yards per rush, that's not going to get it done. I just pick Baltimore by default, just because I can't see Cleveland creating enough offense.
I would say Baltimore, but because they slipped up to Pittsburgh, I don't know what to expect of this team. I'm going to say Cleveland because that game's at home. I think Cleveland, in that environment, a big win. AFC North's already in chaos.
And they already beat Baltimore once.
Right, and it's got to be even more. So I got Cleveland in that one. Fourth game, Bears at Packers.
Chicago Bears are without Jay Cutler. It's really an issue right now at quarterback. The defense has been banged up as well. I think 7 starters are down for them on the defense. Everything is pointing to Green Bay, especially since they are playing night game at home Monday night, big
Lambeau
game,
weeping.
rivalry, Lambeau. I got to go Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers is a bad dude. He's going to figure it out. And Eddie Lacy, he's been really underappreciated, but he's been bringing a lot to that Green Bay running game.
I think if there's no Cutler, no chance for the Bears. And right now he's out. They've lost the Redskins when he wasn't there for part of that game. I think it's just too much for Green Bay there. Final game, the Jersey pick.
Yep.
Steelers, Patriots. Who you got?
I'm going with the Patriots in this game. I just can't see the Steelers stopping Tom Brady. He had a bad game last week. He's looking to bounce back himself. And on top of that, the receiving corps has finally gotten healthy. They have Gronk back, and they have Danny Amendola. And I think that New England is about to have a big week against the Steelers.
Sense of urgency for Pittsburgh. They got to show up. Big Ben said they got to show up. I picked the Patriots once this season. They got me that win. 6-1 on the year with Jersey picks.
All right.
I want to go 7-1. I'm doing it with the black and gold. I got Pittsburgh.
So you're going to 6-2.
I believe 7-1. Number 7-1. Number 7. I believe in the Steelers. Got the Steelers and the Patriots there. That wraps up the NFL football. We'll take a short break and come back with baseball, basketball, and final stories. Oh my.
And we are back here on the National Hour. I'm the light heavyweight champion of the world, Darius Thigpen.
And I'm Jeff Hammersley, also known as Jim Tressel today.
And it's great to have you folks joining us here on the National Hour today. We're about to wrap up the show, but let's start with celebrations for the world champions of baseball.
Boston strong.
Boston Red Sox pulled it off in 6, winning 6-1 in Game 6. The Boston Red Sox have won the World Series, beating the St. Louis Cardinals Wednesday night, and they took the champagne shower. They got the championship celebration going. The first time that they have won in Boston in 95 years, Jeff, since 1918. They had Babe Ruth on that team.
That I think for Boston faithful, they got so close. And with 75, the Carlton Fisk foul pole shot, you think, hey, they're going to win it. They didn't. And I think the city deserves it. What they've gone through with the whole Boston Marathon bombing and everything, this was the city's team this season. And they came back. And it's only fitting. It's a storybook ending. They win the World Series in Fenway in really routing fashion of the St. Louis Cardinals.
Now, while this was the first time they won at home in 95 years, it's the third time that they have won the World Series since 2004, the most in the thousands of any team. And you got to be impressed by the Boston Red Sox.
I mean, they're averaging a World Series every 3 or 4 years, and that's very good. Some like the Mariners, they've never been to a World Series, and if you can get that, just really look at what Boston was last year. They're like the worst team in the AL.
Oh yeah,
they were Minnesota, Cleveland, and Boston was in the bottom 3 there. You turn right around, you get into the playoffs, you beat Detroit, who had Verlander and Scherzer, then you win the World Series against this Cardinals team that's been very experienced in the postseason. I mean, this Boston team, they've come a long way in the past year.
I mean, just looking at the Red Sox, the last 3 seasons, you have the beer and chicken incident. Then you have the worst team, one of the worst teams in baseball last year, Bobby Valentine, that experiment thrown out the window. Yeah. And now you have a world champion team. Unbelievable.
And the thing is, they kept it organically. One of the new manager was with Francona there. So I think for Farrell to be there, and now he's got to manage that team. They knew what he brought to the table. So the chemistry was there for the team. Everything was there, and it paid off because we had just an extraordinary run down the stretch for the Red Sox, and it ends with the big-time World Series win at home.
Well, the easy pick for World Series MVP was David Ortiz, Big Papi, 11 of 16, 2 home runs, 6 RBI in this series. And, Jeff, he reached base 19 times, too short of Barry Bonds' record from 2002. The most any World Series champion has reached base in one series.
And the big thing is, in Game 6, he got walked, 4 times? I mean,
they were pitching around him. He still scored 2 runs.
No, we're not going to pitch this guy. 3rd home run or something else could happen. But I think for David Ortiz, some people thought, hey, he's down past his prime, down the hill, then does this performance and wins a World Series MVP there. I mean, that's big. He's one of those guys who's been there, and he still is there, and an MVP this late in his career, that is huge. And for Boston faithful, it's only signs of better things that come for Boston.
Yeah, David Ortiz, 37 years old, just 1 series ago in the ALCS, he was hitting below 100
it was
at
like
some points.
A .9. It was, when he had the 1 big hit, I'm like, he's batting .9 something. I would have thought he was batting like 200s. No, it's like a .91. Then he does it. There's .633 something against the Cardinals. I'm like, polar opposites there, but whatever. But it's like, 11 to 16 in the World Series. I mean, he carried that Boston offense.
Yeah, it was really impressive to see just how you could come back and still be successful at 37 years old. Really impressive to see David Ortiz and Boston. So congratulations to them, but at the end of one season comes the start of another. Jeff, basketball season started on Tuesday. The
Basketball.
NBA is underway, and why don't we start with the hometown Cleveland Cavaliers winning their first game against the Brooklyn Nets 98-94, and Kyrie, Uncle Drew, very impressive, and I tell you what, that's going to be a fun team to watch. Andrew Bynum comes in, and they also have a couple other free agent acquisitions, including Jarrett Jack. This could be an interesting team.
I think it was. So that first game against Brooklyn last night, I was watching that. I'm like, oh boy. Down the wire, down the stretch, Brooklyn, they got this. Brooklyn doesn't got that. And I think big win against that Brooklyn team that has Garnett, Pierce just stocked. And a big win on home soil, 98-94 in Quicken Loans. I think it's a sign of good things to come for the Cleveland Cavaliers and for the fans, especially since LeBron's been gone for a few years. LeBron free, and he may be back in the playoffs.
We'll slow things down a bit, but starting off 1-0.
I believe, Darius.
1-0 for the Cleveland Cavaliers. 1-1 for the Los Angeles Lakers. Got a big win against the Clippers opening night. Last night, Wednesday, went up against the Warriors, and they ran into some hot shooting, Jeff. Klay Thompson goes off 38 points, nailing threes. Everyone talks about Steph Curry as the best shooter in the league. Klay Thompson may be number 2. He's right up there.
Yeah, with the Warriors, 125-94 against the Lakers. That is a huge margin, saying that you have Kobe on the Lakers, and the Lakers are perennial powers. Now it's like, well, Golden State, could they be the new team of California right now? They're up and up. Curry, if this team gets hot, they are a very dangerous team.
Well, by transitive property, they are technically the best team in California right now, as they beat the Lakers, the Lakers beat the Clippers, and I don't think anybody's going to seriously talk Sacramento right now. So we'll give Sacramento a little bit of time. All right, finally, we're going to talk about the Miami Heat. They beat the Bulls on opening night, 107-95, and Derrick Rose, he did not look 100%. He's healthy, but he did not have it. He was not making shots against Miami's stifling defense.
And he's questionable for their next game with a neck injury or something in that sorts there. But that's the big thing. But looking at the first game, I thought Derrick Rose was garbage shooting a hot hand. No, he was not hot at all. He was moderately cold, I would want to say there. And it's struggle there for the Bulls. But looking at the Heat, they beat the Bulls. Then they lose to the Sixers. I don't know what to expect from both those teams.
Okay, here's my take on this game. Obviously, I'm a Sixers fan, so I'm a little biased. But I think the Sixers are playing right now to play as hard as they can, and they want to beat every team as bad as they can. So they played up against Miami, playing at home. And remember, Miami, no Dwayne Wade, and they're not playing for every game. They're playing for June. They're playing for a championship.
That's true.
So you have one team playing up and one playing down. Obviously, you had some impressive play. Michael Carter-Williams got a couple of steals on LeBron. He had 9 steals in the game. Near the quadruple double, 22 points,
stuff.
12 assists, 9 steals, and 7 boards. And then you had Evan Turner dunking.
Oh, boy.
Evan Turner dunking on LeBron James.
Here.
Everyone wants to talk about that, but LeBron didn't even seriously go at it. Come on.
But the fact that he dunked on, that's the big thing. And the Sixers won the game. Scoreboard at the end, Sixers by 4, 114, 110.
Sixers 114, Miami Heat 110. Sixers are 1-0. All right, Jeff, we're going to get on to the final stories, and we're going to start with you and your final story.
For the first time in 95 years, the people of Boston got to witness a World Series clinching win at home. Yes, I understand that the Boston Red Sox have won 2 World Series in the first 12 years of this century. However, winning a World Series on the road in sweeping fashion nonetheless is a lot different than winning the World Series in your home place on your home soil. The last time Boston was close to doing this and winning a World Series at home in Fenway was when Carlton Fisk hit the foul pole in left field to force a Game 7 at Fenway. But the Red Sox lost it, and that was 1975. Now it's 2013. The people of Boston and the Red Sox were long overdue to win a World Series at home in Fenway.
It's the reason we love sports, the championship celebration. Sure, more likely than not, your team, like mine, didn't win a championship this past season. Most of us don't know what it means to watch your team celebrate a title. Only one can win each year. But oh, how sweet it is if you ever get to experience your team being number 1, the world champions. It's why we continue to hold out hope. It's why Browns and Eagles fans continue to pack the stadium every Sunday. It's why we believe the way we hold a flag has influence over a game that we have literally nothing to do with. Although we put so much energy into our teams and seemingly never get repaid. How sweet it is when your team finally does it. Dozens of the baddest dudes on the planet prancing around like little boys on Christmas. And thousands of strangers embracing like they've known each other for years. That's a celebration that I want to be a part of. We thank you for joining us here on the National Hour today. I'm the world champion, Darius Thigpen.
And I'm Jeff Hammersley.
We'll try to do better next time. I will put my mouthpiece back in, show you some boxing skills, and we will see you next time. Happy Halloween, folks.
Basketball's back, everybody. Go Bucks.